When a teacher plans out their year, they will first take their 6 transdisciplinary themes, and they will decide in which order throughout the year they would like to teach them. Once this is done, they will then look at which part of the paragraph the grade is looking at, and then they will come forward to this stage. At this stage, they pick which 2 or 3 key concepts they would like to help them drive the unit. The key concepts include form, function, causation, change, connection, perspective, responsibility, and reflection. Each one of these key concepts also has a description to describe what it means. So, for example, how is it changing, of course, will link to the key concept of change. Or what is our responsibility links very easily to our key concept of responsibility. What is it like, for example, explains form. And how does it work, example, explains function. When a teacher starts thinking about how to teach and introduce a unit of inquiry, this next slide, the authorizing cycle, really explains the process that the child will go through from the beginning to the end of the unit of inquiry. A teacher will always start off with a connection activity, which really tries to make the unit itself feel like the student can connect to it. It's an activity that will allow the student to bring, or it's an activity that will bring the unit of inquiry down onto the child's level so that they can actually understand why that unit is actually important to them and why it's actually valuable for them to actually learn and think about that in their lives. After the connection activity, we come down to the invitation activity. And the invitation activity is really where the teaching starts, and the teacher will start saying to the class, okay, so we're going to start learning about something now. So what should we do? And then they'll start a few weeks of teaching with the class where they'll start giving them some of the knowledge so they can start to be more interested about this particular concept that they're looking at. From the invitation, the students will then naturally start asking questions because they'll want to know more. And this is where the tension happens. And the tension is actually one of the most enjoyable parts because we really try to make the student feel comfortable with the fact that they hit a part of in their mind where they realize they don't know the answer to something they want to know the answer to. And we really want them to feel okay about this. And the students are encouraged to write down these questions that come up in their mind as this is happening. So an example of this is if we go from the beginning of connection and we take an example of learning about your human body, we could have a look at the connection activity as well. We all have bodies, and why do we get tired, and why do we get tired at the end of the night and also tired after exercise? And you can do some exercise with the students straight away and get them active so they realize, oh, this affects me just like it affects the people in the stories we're reading about or the people in the activities we're looking at. And then in the invitation, you can, of course, start looking and learning with the student a little bit about different parts of their body and why it's important to eat well and what would happen if we didn't clean our teeth or something like this. And, of course, then they start asking questions like, oh, well, how old was the oldest person in the world, or how tall were they, or how can I make sure I get my hours sleep, or how can I make sure that I'm keeping my body healthy. And through all of these tension questions that they have, that then goes forward to the investigation stage, where they can go away and actually try to find the answers to their questions. Now, in the higher grades, the students are encouraged to take this part alone, where they can go and investigate their questions by themselves or in a collaborative group. And in the lower grades, it's quite often that the students can do this as a guided inquiry with the whole class together. But through this investigation, they will then create their project or summative task, which they're making to show off, and then they do a first demonstration of what they think they've learned. And then it's a very good step next for them to go and do some revision on, is it exactly how they want it to be? Do they want to change it in some way? And then they go on to the final representation, which is where they show off their work. And then they have we think it's very important for a child to have time to reflect. So they have an evaluation stage where they can really think about the work that they've done and did they answer that first question that they had in the first place. or would they do it differently next time if they did it again? And then this last little section here, action, this really means that we want the children to actually, well, if you have learnt something and you have learnt more now about your body, for example, what action will you take going forward now you have gained this knowledge? So will they start eating healthier on purpose? Or will they start coming in telling the teacher that I've been brushing my teeth more than usual, or I've been going out on my bike more than usual because I want to have a healthier lifestyle? So we really want to see the action that the children take after the inquiry is finished. And this cycle really gives the child the opportunity to really feel that they are in charge, or they are really involved in their own learning, in their own development in that unit of inquiry. So here, if we look practically at how it works inside of our school, this is a program of inquiry map which a teacher has created to show all of the 6 units across the year and how they're going to teach them. So you can see here at the top that they've decided when it's going to be happening, and then here you have your 6 transdisciplinary themes, and the teacher has highlighted which part of the theme they're going to be looking at in their grade level. From this, the teacher has then created the key concepts, and they've taken their 2 or 3 key concepts, which is going to help them drive the unit. And then they come down to this section here called the central idea. Now, the central idea I'm going to post a different video on because it's quite an important part of the inquiry. Right now, I can just describe it as it's the key sentence or statement which the teacher needs this child to understand by the end of the inquiry. So, for example, if I had a look at the second unit of inquiry here, where we are in place and time, the central idea says that explorers can face a variety of different challenges during their voyages of discovery. So the idea is that if the student can understand that, then it will help them understand more discoveries and explorations. Then that central idea is actually broken down into steps called the lines of inquiry. And the lines of inquiry, if they understand these 3, then it helps them understand the central idea more. So the lines of inquiry here, and sorry it's a little bit blurred obviously, is it explains that the early explorers were inspired to set sail in search of new lands. And it says that there have been significant voyages of discovery which have taken place, and that there are a variety of different challenges which they face. So the idea is that if the child can understand all these 3, then that will help them understand the central idea better, which in turn then will help them understand the part of the descriptor in which they've been having a look at. Another good document to have a look at is the curriculum overview. This shows you the 6 units of inquiry throughout the year and how other subject areas will be integrated into the inquiry, or what will be happening at the same time as the inquiry. So if we again have a look at this where we are in place and time unit on explorers and exploration, you can see that in language they might decide to include journal writing, newspaper stories and biographies linked to the inquiry. So, for example, they could be doing journal writing as an explorer themselves, how it felt to be an explorer, or they could be learning about how to write newspapers, but then write newspaper reports on being in the past and pretending to write a newspaper story from Christopher Columbus or from another famous explorer. Or they could be doing a biography, reading biographies and writing biographies about famous people. The teacher can also decide of these 3 if there are any which they want to do stand alone, so not connected to the inquiry itself. But the purpose of the PYP program is to try to include, if you can in an authentic way, these into the unit of inquiry. In the mathematics, there is a inquiry link, so when they're doing this, how explorers and the world and maps, then they will be looking at grid points and coordinates. But in the classroom, they will also be doing math which is not connected to the unit of inquiry, and this is called standalone, and you can see here multiplication will be their focus. This continues for all the 6 units, having both their standalone section and their inquiry-related section, as well as in the math you can see that if you're looking at how the world works and how a city is organized, for example, they might be writing a report on the structures inside of a city.